Blender is basically this open source software. So I didn't want to conduct a workshop where, I just talk about the terminologies and what button does what. And then if you click on this, this does what. I actually wanted an output-based sort of a workshop. So the coffee cup picture, which I shared with you guys, that is what I will basically be doing over the next 2 hours. And as I'm doing it, I'll be explaining to you how I'm doing it and what features I'm using and how you can use them in different ways, etc. So that's pretty much going to be this introductory workshop. 2 hours is quite less to teach everything, so I hope that I can add as much value as possible within that short time. Okay, so I'll move on to sharing my screen. 1 second. Okay, so before I begin the software, I just wanted to talk about the shortcuts. So I had already shared a link on the WhatsApp group about the various shortcuts that I will be using, and I'll explain them to you as well as I'm doing it. So don't worry. If you want, you can note them down, but I've also sent a link that basically has a lot of shortcuts, including the ones which I'll be using for today. So that should be fine. And the second thing is that I'll be using a mouse because some functions of Blender require you to have a scroll wheel or a middle mouse button. So for those of you who don't have a mouse, you can basically follow these instructions. Wherever I have to use the middle mouse button, I can just replace that with Alt plus left mouse if I don't have a mouse or if you don't have a mouse. So every time that I say that, okay, this is where you're going to be using your middle mouse button, if in case you don't have a mouse, then hold Alt and left mouse, and that will replace the function of the middle mouse button. Okay, cool. So now that I'm done with that, let me formally start this or informally start this, whatever. The moment you open the software, this is what you're going to get on your screen, right? This is, the first thing that you're going to see. So if I click anywhere on the screen, it goes away. Okay. Before I start, let me just start this. Okay. If you notice, then the bottom left of the screen, I've started screencasting, or I'm not sure what it's called, but essentially every time I press a button or I press something on the keyboard, it shows over here. So if in case you can't hear what I'm saying or what button I click to do something, you can observe the bottom left hand of the screen and you will get to know what I clicked or what I did not click. Okay, so the first thing that you see in the software is this cube. Okay, that's pretty much it. So first, before I do anything to the cube, I'm going to talk about a few navigation methods. First, zooming in and zooming out, right? So if you have a mouse, then through your scroll wheel, you can zoom in and you can zoom out, okay? In case you don't have a mouse, as I said, then on your keyboard, right next to the number pad, you will have the plus and minus. So if I keep pressing plus, it zooms in, and if I keep pressing minus, it zooms out. So if you have a scroll wheel, you can zoom in, zoom out. If you don't have a scroll wheel, then you can use plus and minus. Okay. If I want to view different sides of the cube, then I hold the middle mouse button. So by holding the middle mouse button, I can, essentially look at all of these different views. However, as I said, if you don't have a mouse, then if you hold Alt and left mouse button, then you can still move it around. While holding Alt and the left mouse button, you can use your trackpad to view the different sides of the cube. By the way, if anyone has any doubt at any point of time, please unmute yourself and ask. It's completely fine. I can't see the text, so if you're typing in something, I won't be able to see it, but you can unmute yourself and let me know. Okay, so we learned about zooming in and looking, at the different views. If you want to basically pan this entire thing around, you hold Shift and the middle mouse button, and you basically can move it around. Okay, so there's a difference between moving it around like this versus moving it around like this. So for moving it around like this, I'm holding the middle mouse button. For moving it around like this, I hold Shift and then I move it. Okay, is this on? Yeah, it's on, fine. Okay, now that we're done with that, immediately when you see your screen, you will notice that there are three components over here. First is the cube, obviously. Then you have this stick sort of a thing, and then you have another weird object over here. Now this is your camera, and this is your lamp. How and when we will be using that, I'll explain as we are progressing through. Few more shortcuts. Uh, your number pad, the different numbers on your number pad give you different views. Okay, so to explain that a little bit more in detail, for example, if you press 7, you will get this view. If you press 1, you get this view. If you press 3, you get this. You might not immediately figure out the difference, but let me explain how to understand them. So you will notice that there is a green line and there's a red line, and the blue line is not yet visible, but okay. So there's a blue line that runs along over here, right? So the green line is the y-axis, the red line is the x-axis, and that blue line is the z-axis, okay? So for example, if I press 7, then I am looking at the top view because I can see the x and the y axis, and the z axis is pointing away from the screen. If I press 1, for example, now you will notice that x axis and the z axis are on your computer, and the green axis, which is the y axis, is pointing outwards, right? If you press 3, then the z axis and the y axis are on the screen, and the x axis is pointing outwards. So 1, 3, and 7. You can press other numbers in your keypad as well, and they will give you different views. But for basic, views, you have 7, 1, and 3, and that should be more than enough. All right. Okay. The other thing is, this is a very helpful feature. If you press A, whatever is on the screen gets automatically selected. Right? So if I press A, you will notice that the cube is selected, the lamp is selected, as well as the camera is selected. If I press A again, it deselects everything. So this is again helpful because a lot of times if you have a lot of things to select, you need not go through clicking each one of them. You can A and select it. At the same time, for example, whatever I have clicked, for example, if I have just clicked the lamp and if I click A again, it unselects everything. So A is used for both selecting everything as well as unselecting everything. Right. Okay, so now that I'm done with this, let me talk about a few more functions, right? So suppose you want to move this cube around in this space. The first thing that you're going to do is click on the cube, right? So it's selected. You can notice that this orange line sort of, comes around its corners. If you want to move it around, the shortcut is G, right? So G for geography. If you press G once, you can move it wherever you want on the screen. However, let's assume, by the way, if I press Control plus Z, it undoes. So Control plus Z is the same over here. Let's assume that I want to move only along one of the axes. So I can combine, right? If I press G and then I press X, you will notice that I can only move in the X axis. If again I press G and I press Y, I can only move along the Y axis. If I press G and press Z, I can only move along the Z axis. This is again very helpful if you're trying to position something very precisely, then you can use the help of the axis to sort of position it properly, because sometimes trying to move the object in a freehand manner might be confusing because you're working with a 3D space. So using G with the axes is also helpful. Okay. The other thing is scaling. So to make this cube smaller or bigger, I just have to press S, right? So if I press S and by using my mouse, I can either scale it up or I can scale it down, right? So again, very basic. What if I want to rotate this cube, right? So for rotating, again, the shortcut is pretty simple. It's R. So R for rotating. So I click R and then I can rotate it in any way that I want. Again, if I want to rotate it along a particular axis, which is what I'll be doing most of the time. So for example, if I press R and X, I can only rotate it along the X axis, right? If I press R and Y, I can only rotate it along the Y axis. And if I press R and Z, I can only rotate it along the Z axis. Okay, so to summarize whatever I've done so far, I've talked about moving the object by using the shortcut G. I've talked about scaling it using S, and I've talked about rotating it using R, right? So very, very simple. However, if you notice at this point, all I can do pretty much is whatever I've said. I can't select any of the faces of the cube, right? Suppose I wanted to select this top face or the side face, or let's assume I wanted to select only this vertex, or I wanted to select only this edge, right? I'm not able to select anything. And the reason for that is because there are two modes that you will be working with. One is called the object mode and the other is called the edit mode, right? So to sort of figure out where you are right now, if you go to the bottom left of your screen, you will notice that there is this button over here that says object mode, right? It's clearly saying object mode. If you click on that, you have all these other modes. You don't have to really worry about them, but you do have to worry about this edit mode. For any alterations that you want to do to this geometry, you'll basically be working in edit mode. So there are two ways to go to the edit mode. The first is that you click over here and you click on the edit mode and you're in edit mode. The other is the shortcut, which is tab. So if I press tab on my keyboard, I can shift between edit mode and object mode, right? So I'm constantly pressing tab and I can shift between edit mode and object mode. All right, let me go to edit mode right now. Once I'm in edit mode, you will notice that everything is selected. So as usual, if I want to deselect it, I just have to press A and everything is unselected. Now, if you again go to the bottom part of your screen, you will notice that there are these three buttons over here. If you just hover your mouse above them, one of them says vertex select, one of them says edge select, and one of them says face select. And they literally mean what they say. So right now it's at vertex select, which means that I can only select vertices. I cannot select this entire face. I cannot select this entire edge. I can only, for the time being, select these vertices. Let's assume I wanted to select the edges. So I click on that and now I can only select the edges. You will notice that as I'm selecting the, it's becoming white. Then if I wanted to select face, I click on the face option and now I can select full faces, right? Fine. Once I have selected a face, so for example, I have selected a face over here, whatever I told before about moving, about scaling, about rotating, I can do it. I can do all of those things to this face now. For example, I have selected this face over here. If I press G, then you will notice that I can move this face anywhere I want. Similarly, let's assume I wanted to move that face along the y-axis. So I press G and then I press Y, and you can notice that immediately I can, move this only along the y-axis. Suppose I wanted to scale it. Again, I have this face selected. If I press on S, I can scale only this face or I can scale it up. Let's assume I wanted to rotate that along, let's say the y-axis, right? So I click on R and then I click on Y, and then, I can rotate it along the y-axis, right? So R and Y will allow me to rotate this face along the y-axis. So this is basically how you're going to be changing the geometries. You start off with a very simple geometry like this, and then you have the liberty to select each face, each edge, and each vertex, and then play around with them even further. So for example, I showed it to you with faces, but if I were to select an edge, for example, and let's assume I have selected this edge over here, right? Again, if I press on S, I can scale only this edge, both inwards and outwards. I can move only this edge, and I can even rotate only this edge, right? So to summarize again, you can select faces, edges, and vertices, and while you have selected them in edit mode, you can move them, which is by using G. You can scale them, make them small or big, and then you can also rotate them. And not only can you do all these things, but you can do these things with reference to a particular axis. So if you want to rotate a face only with respect to X, you can do that. As I said, you choose a face, R, and then let's say Y. So this will rotate only along the Y-axis. Okay. Before I continue, I'll talk about two more things which I'll be using and in general people use. The first of them, I think for the mechanical engineering students, they would have heard this a lot, which is extrusion. So extrusion is, it just extends basically. So let's assume I've selected a face over here again. If I click on E, which is the shortcut for extrusion, I can, you will notice that I can extrude this face. Uh, a doubt might be that, for example, if I press G and Y, I can move it like this. And if I press extrude and Y, I can move it like this. So what's the difference? It's pretty obvious. If you move it, then you will notice that the number of faces is still pretty much the same, right? It's 6. That surface has basically moved. But in extrusion, you are keeping that surface as it is, and you're just extruding, a new thing from it. And you will notice that you had the old faces over here, but you've also got these new faces over here. So again, if for example I moved, let's say this face using G, and let's assume I scaled it down, you will notice that the entire the entire thing got tapered. However, let's assume I had extruded it and then I scaled it down. You will notice that only this part is getting tapered down, right? This is unaffected. So that's extrusion. The other one is called inset or insert face. I'm not sure for the technical word of it, but basically the shortcut for that on your keyboard is I, right? If you press on I, you can do this. So over here, you're essentially creating a face within a face, you can say, right? So again, very helpful. So let me sort of explain. If I were to click on I get this, and then this face again, I can move out or I can move in. I can then further extrude this, for example, let's say. And then for each of these faces, I can again do the same thing. For example, let's assume I choose this. I again insert a face over here, and then I extrude it, let's say, along the Z-axis, right? So this is how you basically start off with your designs. You start off with the basic geometry, and then you begin to play around with it. So let me just go back. Again, to summarize, we talked about the different things that you can do in edit mode, and I talked about two more things, which is inset and extrusion. Extrusion keyboard shortcut is E, and inset keyboard shortcut is I, right? So this is all that you can do in edit mode. Now, let me go back to my object mode. So, okay, here I'm in the object. Now, we said that we're going to design a coffee cup, right? So at this point, we're going to start designing the coffee cup. So I need to get rid of this. So every time you want to delete something, not just an object, but even something like a face. So you can selectively delete stuff. You can selectively delete a face. You can selectively delete an edge. So right now I want to delete this entire object. And so the keyboard shortcut for that is X. Okay. So you select the object, you click on X, you get this option of delete and enter. It's gone, right? At the same time, I also don't want this lamp. So I'll click on that lamp, click on X, delete, and it's gone. Now, before I begin designing the coffee thing, the coffee cup, I'll just explain what I'm going to do so that you have a fair idea. So this is a terrible drawing, but hopefully it conveys the idea. So first, I'm going to take a circle, right? And a circle is a two-dimensional space, right? I'm going to take a circle with no thickness whatsoever. Step 2, I'm going to try and extrude it in some way so that it has some thickness. Then I'm going to extrude this, even further so that it becomes a 3D cylinder. Once it becomes a 3D cylinder, the bottom part, I will taper it, right? So that it has this conical shape. And then I will add the handle to it. And up until step 4, it will look like this very boxy type of structure. But then step 5 is where it will become really smooth and it'll have a nice look to it. So now that I've explained this, let me try to go back. Okay, right. So now, now that we're over here, if you want to add any geometry, so Blender has a set of predefined geometries that you can start with. The cube was one example. To get that drop-down menu, the shortcut is Shift and A. Okay. When you click Shift and A, let me do that again, you get this entire menu. For most people, you will pretty much be using only mesh, camera, and lamp. The other things you'll not be using it. I personally have not used them as such so far. So mesh, if you notice, you get some basic geometries like a plane, a cube, circle, UV sphere, cylinder, etc. Camera obviously will give you another camera, and then you also have the lamp. So For example, what we had in the beginning was this cube over here, right? What I want for the time being is a circle to start off with, right? So I'll click on the circle, and there we go. I just got a circle. So from here, uh, if you notice bottom left again, it's in object mode. So I can't do anything with this circle. I can only like move it or scale it or whatever. If I have to do something with this circle, I have to go to edit mode. So I'll click here, I'll go to edit mode. In the edit mode, if you want to select the edges, first of all, it's already selected, so let me deselect everything. Again, if I choose on vertices, I can select the individual vertices of this circle. If I click on edges, I can select the individual edges of the circle. And if I click on faces, I can't select anything because, there are no faces. So I'm going to click on edge, and I'm going to, I basically have to select everything. Now, if I want to select all of these edges, one way obviously would be I just press A and everything gets selected, right? The other method is I click on any one edge and then I hold shift. While holding shift, I can select other edges. So if you're holding shift, then you can multi-select. And if you leave holding shift and if you click somewhere, everything is gone, right? So you need to hold shift and then you can multi-select, right? Another thing, if you notice, then I've got my camera over here and I've got this circle over here. But if I press A, only the circle gets selected, right? Not the camera. Because the circle is in edit mode and the camera
How to
is
zoom it?
not in edit mode. Sorry? Did someone have a
How
doubt
to
about
zoom
it?
it?
How to zoom in? If you have a mouse, you can use your scroll wheel to zoom in and zoom out. If you don't have a mouse, then on the keypad, you have your plus and minus sign. So you can use numpad plus and numpad minus to zoom in and zoom out. Is that fine?
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. Cool, cool, cool. So if I'm in edit mode, right? Because I'm in edit mode, if I press A, everything that is in edit mode gets selected and the camera is not in edit mode. However, if you notice, if I go back in object mode, right? It's in object mode right now. And now if I press A, both the camera as well as the 2D circle gets selected, right? Because I'm in object mode and both of these are in object mode. However, I'm selecting the circle and then moving into edit mode. So only the circle is in edit mode. So now if I press A, only the circle gets selected, right? Fine. Now that I've selected the circle, if I press E, you guys should know that it'll begin extruding, right? Simple. Now the issue is I don't want this extrusion. I wanted it to sort of extrude here. So another really good thing about Blender is that you can combine multiple shortcuts. Just one sec. All right. So you can combine multiple shortcuts. So over here, you will, I'll explain the two shortcuts separately, right? So if I just press E, it extrudes, right? And if I just press S, it, scales, it scales whether less or more. However, if I combine the two, I can achieve both. So for example, I click on E and it's extruding like this. And after I have clicked on E, if I press on S, then I can extrude it like this, right? So this is very interesting because if I wanted to extrude it like that, then I basically combine E with S. So this is what I get. All right, so let me choose of a particular thickness. I think this is fine. Okay. If I wanted to view the top view of this, I can press 7 and I'm automatically in the top view. If I wanted the side view, I can press 1 or 3, right? So that's fine. Now that I have this, I want to extrude this entire surface up now. And to do that, right now, if you notice, it is an edge select. I can choose face select, and now I can select the different faces, right? So again, you have the option, if right now I want to select all of these faces, you have the option of individually selecting all of them by holding shift. So I can individually go about selecting each face, or if I want to select everything, I can just press A and everything is selected, right? So I'll do that. I pressed A. Now that I've pressed A, if I press on E again, you will notice that this entire thing is getting extruded, right? So this is exactly what I wanted. However, I want to have a fair idea about the height. So after I have selected my faces, I'm going to go in the side view. This is my side view. I'll zoom out a little bit and now I'll press extrude. Right. Now that I press extrude, I can directly visualize the height. So let's assume around this much should be fine. Yeah. Okay, great. So I have this little cylinder over here, right? So the next step, as I said, is I want to taper this bottom part so that it looks like a conical cup. So to do that, I want to select all the bottom faces again. So again, if you want, you can individually select them using Shift and like so holding Shift and then selecting. But if you press A, this time you can't use A because when you press A, it selects everything, right? And you can't use A this time. You have to individually select them. So I'm going to individually select them. I'm holding
Hey,
Shift.
I have a small doubt.
Yeah, sure.
The UI is a little different. I'm not able to select the faces in my UI. I don't know where the option is.
So this bottom part is not there for you.
Nope.
Are you using 2.79?
I just followed the link you guys sent me. I don't know if that is 2.7 or not.
Are you in edit mode?
Yep.
You
All
sure?
of the edit mode is in the top for me. It is not in the bottom, as in yours.
It's not in the bottom for you. I think
Usually
probably.
2.9. In 2.9, the edit mode is towards the top left.
Yeah, probably.
Okay, fine. Continue. I don't want to interrupt.
Okay, cool, cool. Dude, it's fine. If you can just follow what I'm saying, as in the concept part of it,
Yes,
the
yes, yes.
UI part will take very few time to learn, and then you can basically adapt
Yeah, yeah.
all of
All
this.
right, all right. No problem. You can continue.
Cool, cool.
Yeah.
So I basically select all the bottom faces, and once I've selected them, I'll again go to my side view, whether 1 or 3, and then I'll use S to scale this down, right? So I can either scale it up or I can scale it down. Fine. If, for example, okay, so now I've scaled it down. However, let's assume that I want to change the height. So because the bottom face has already been selected, if I just press G, I can move it wherever I want. But I want to move it only along the Z axis. So with G, I will press Z, and now I can only move it, I can only move it in the Z axis. So I'll keep it somewhere here. This should be fine. Okay. Now, if I want to move this entire thing, again, I can just press A, the entire thing is selected. I can press G and Z, and it'll only move in the Z axis, and I can keep it somewhere here. Okay, so cool. We've got a somewhat structure of a coffee cup with a hole at the bottom. So this is obviously not a coffee cup because there's a hole in the bottom. So the next step is we need to fill up this hole, right? So the way that we're going to do that is first, we're going to select all the edges of the inside circle right here, all the edges of the inside circle. And once I've selected those edges, there is a shortcut to just insert a face, right? Right now, if you notice, if I just click somewhere, it's selecting the faces, and I don't want to select the faces. I just want to select the inside edges. So what do? I go back to edges, and now I can select the edges, right? So same procedure. I hold shift and then I individually, one second. Yeah. And then I individually select all of these edges so that I'm selecting the inside circle. There are shortcuts to select, for example, certain line segments, etc. But I think for this class, this should be fine. They don't seem to work all the time, the shortcuts. Okay. So I'll keep selecting, select, 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 select. Okay. So I've essentially selected all of my, I've basically selected the edges of the entirety of the inside circle. Now I want to insert a face over here, or I basically want to cover this up. To cover up something that you have already covered the boundaries of, right? So for this circle, the inner circle was the boundary. You click on the shortcut F, and that's it, right? F for face, it just fills it up. That's it. So now you've got the base has also been filled up, right? Pretty much it. Now we need to move on to making the handle. Okay. So before I make the handle, uh, let me just, yeah, okay, fine. Let me continue. Sorry. So now that I want to make the handle, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to faces. And if you notice, for, you know, for each face, it is going all the way from the top to the bottom, right? So if I select, for example, this face, it goes like this entirety of the face is selected. What if I want to divide this into, let's say, three parts? So I want it in such a way that there are three faces for one strip, right? Right now, it's only one face for one strip. Let's assume I wanted three faces. So 1, 2, and 3. The reason I want three faces is that from the middle face, I can extrude, and then with that extrusion, I can make a handle. That's the reason I want like three faces instead of one. So if you want to basically divide it like this, there is something called a loop cut. So in order for you to add a loop cut, you select any of the faces, like for example, how I've selected, and the shortcut is Control plus R. Okay. So when you click on Control plus R, you get this purple line over here, right? And it's not moving. If you click your left mouse button once, you can now move it wherever you want in this structure. So let's assume I want to keep it somewhere here. Okay, cool. Now I want another loop cut like this somewhere here. So again, I'll just select any random line, uh, press on Control plus R, and then I get another purple line. Left click once, and then I can move this as well. Let me just keep it somewhere here. Okay. So now I've got these two lines that run like this. If I go back to choosing faces, you will now notice that instead of one strip, I have the ability to choose. Each part is now divided into three faces, right? And this is exactly what I wanted. So now I have got this. Cool. Now we can begin working on making the handle, right? Before I talk about making the handle, this is our top view. I will preferably try to extrude a handle from any of the faces that are parallel to the axes, and I'll explain why I'm doing that, right? So for example, this is my top view. I'll try to make a handle either here or here or here or here, right? Now you can ask me, well, I want to make my handle here, right? Why can't I make it? I mean, it doesn't matter. Like, even if I make it here, you can rotate the entire cup and the handle will come here anyways. The reason why I'm choosing an axis is because while extruding, I can make sure that the extrusion only happens along that axis, and therefore the extrusion is, smooth. So let's choose the red axis over here. Let me select two faces, right? So I selected this, holding shift, I select that, right? Now, if I press on E, it extrudes like this. To basically give you an idea, if I go into the side view, right? And if I press on E, it extrudes like this. The reason why I wanted to select the two faces such that they are in line with one of the axes is because now if I press on E and if I press on X, I can extrude it along one of the axes, right? And for that simplicity, I chose the faces along one of the axes. So for example, I can extrude it somewhere. Yeah, that should be fine, right? Okay, so I've extruded it. Let's assume you wanted to change it a little bit more. Again, as I said, you can individually select these faces and scale them and rotate them and do whatever you want. To give you a simple example, I'll choose edges, right? And then I'll choose, for example, these two edges, go to my side view, and then click on G and then X, and you will notice that I can, alter, for example, the shape of the handle. This is just one way of doing it. You can do a lot more. You can scale it, you can move it, etc. But I'm just trying to showcase like one example, right? Okay, cool. Uh, Obviously, this is not a handle because like you can't put your fingers anywhere, right? So we need a big hole over here for you to grab the coffee cup. And the way that I'm going to do is I'll go back to faces, right? So I can select different faces. I'll select one face over here, and I'll select while holding shift, I'll select this face over here. So I have selected two faces, right? Once I have selected two faces, I will use the inset shortcut, which I talked about in the beginning. So I press the keyboard shortcut I, right? And I can basically move it in like this, right? So let's say this much is fine, right? So both the, I mean, inset has happened on both the faces. Now that I have inset it, all I have to do is delete it, which is very simple. I press on X, and then I get this option of what do I want to delete. So I have the option of deleting vertices, deleting edges, deleting faces. So I'm just going to click on faces, right? And there it is. So I have a very boxy type of coffee cup. Right? It's not at all pretty, but we'll make it pretty in a while. So that is the basic amount of modeling. Now, of course, it doesn't look smooth at all. In fact, it looks pretty disgusting. So how do we make it smooth? This is where another very, very cool feature of Blender comes in. Uh, I'll go to edit mode. Sorry, I'm in edit mode right now. I'll go back to object mode. So I'll go back to object mode. So I can't select any of the faces. I can't select any of the edges. Yeah.
Excuse me, bro. Can you repeat the creation of the hand?
Sorry.
The creation of the hand. Can you repeat once?
Uh, from which part do you want me to repeat it, dude?
No, just from the beginning of the handle, the surface one.
Okay, cool. Sure, no problem. I'll explain it to you by taking another handle over here. Okay, so I'm in edit mode right now. I basically made a single face, into three parts. That part you understood, right? I used a loop cut. I got these two lines. Yeah, cool. Then what I did is that I chose two faces such that they are parallel to this axis, or I could have chosen even, for example, these two faces, as long as they are parallel to an axis. There's no particular reason why they are parallel to an axis. The only reason I selected them is because I can extrude them, right, in a particular axis. So, for example, I chose these two faces, right? And then I click on E and then I click on X. So it extrudes only in this axis direction. The two faces, okay? And then I clicked on I inset. So what I does is it takes a face and you can make another smaller face within it. So I made a smaller face, right, on both the sides, and then I press on X, and then I get the option of deleting. So I can delete whether vertices, edges, or faces. So if I click on faces, I am able to delete both the faces. Did you get the point?
Yeah. Okay, got it.
Cool.
Thank you.
No problem. Okay, so I just press Control plus D and I got all of that back. Okay, so as I was saying, right now I'm in edit mode. I'll go back to object mode. So I can't select any of the faces. I can only select the object as a whole, right? I can only select coffee cup as a whole. So let me select the coffee cup. On the right hand side of your screen, you will see this entire big box over here. At the top, you have all of these multiple buttons. In that, there's a button that looks like a wrench. If you go on that button, you get the option of modifier. It says object modifier. Click on that. Then click on add modifier. When you click on add modifier, you will get lots of options. But there is this one particular option called subdivision surface, right? Click on that. And you will get these options of apply, copy, view, and render. Do not click apply yet, right? We'll click apply all the way in the end. Right now, don't click on apply whatsoever. You will have this. Now, let me explain how this works. So this is our boxy figure right over here. Under subdivisions, you have two options. One is view and one is render. For the time being, we'll only work with view, and I'll come back to render in the end, right? If you notice, right now it's at 0. The moment I make it go at 1, you will notice that it slightly became more smooth, right? It went from being very boxy and very sharp to having a little bit more divisions. The modifier is exactly that. It's called the subdivision modifier. It basically keeps dividing it. So right now I'm at 1. If I keep increasing it, you will notice that the smoothness progressively increases, right? So right now it is smooth, but still there is lots of, boxy type of structure happening over here. So right now I'm at 2. I can keep going 3, 4, 5, and 6. I usually like to stop at 6 because at 6 it's pretty smooth for me. So I usually leave it at 6. If you notice, in general, you've got a very good looking coffee cup, except that inside part, and also the bottom part. The bottom part has a weird uh, deformation happening, and inside part also has a weird deformation happening. I'll explain how to correct that in a minute. So overall, your coffee cup at this point looks nice. However, there are two problems, as I said. One is the bottom of the coffee cup, which is weirdly distorted. And the second, if you notice, is that this handle, this part is hollow, right? There's a cavity here. So we want to add a surface to cover this up, okay? Another thing, usually when we are editing, we prefer to edit it in the zero view. So I'm going to keep it at zero itself, right? It's much easier to edit in this mode because I can, actively select the faces. It's much more easier. When you try to edit with a modifier, which you can, by the way, so even when it is at 6 or 5 or 4, you can still edit it. But if your computer isn't that powerful, it's going to begin to lag, right? So I'll keep it at zero for the time being. I'll go back to my edit mode and I'll try to resolve those two issues. One was the bottom was becoming very weird, and the second was, there's basically a cavity over here. So how do we fill that cavity, right? So let's address the first problem here, the cavity. So I'm going to go to my edge select, and then I'm going to basically begin to add faces over here. So I'm going to choose this edge first. Holding shift, I'll select this edge, and then I'll press on F, right? So the face is formed. Similarly, I'll repeat the same thing over here for the top. One second. Okay, so select that, holding shift, select that, click on F, you've got a face, right? Now, to apply the faces over here, hold shift and cover the entire boundary. So click on F and that has also gotten covered. Similarly, lastly, select all the edges and click on F and it's selected, right? So now you've got this, that problem is resolved. You can check it. You can go back to object mode and you can bring this back to 6. And you will notice that that cavity is gone, right? That cavity is no longer there. So it's smooth now, right? However, the other problem is still there, which is this weird deformation, or I don't know what it's called, right? So let's try to address that. I'll go back to 0. I'll go back to edit mode, okay? Now, when I'm back in edit mode, I'm going to choose face select, and then I'll choose this face, okay? Once I select this face, I want you to hit the letter N on your keyboard. When you click on N, you have this new little tab that opens up, right? So if I click N, it goes away. If I click, it comes back. So let me just repeat that. Very simple. I choose my bottom face. After selecting my bottom face, I click on N. So I get this little tab over here, right? In this tab, at the top of the tab, you will notice that there is something called a mean crease, right? I'm going to select this mean crease and change its value from 0 to 1 and click enter. The moment I change its value, you will notice that the boundary of this bottom surface has become purple. I'll explain what mean crease does in a bit, right? So what mean crease does is, even when you're applying the subdivision modifier, right? Essentially, when you're making it smooth, if you apply mean crease anywhere, mean crease basically maintains the sharpness, right? So our bottom circle was getting deformed. It was getting, you can imagine sort of getting pulled, like a bed sheet trying to get pulled. When we apply mean crease, the boundary of the circle that I have selected over here it maintains the sharpness, right? So I'll give you another example. I will apply mean crease, for example, to one of the sides, right? So let me select the edge. Let me go to mean crease and keep it at 1, right? So right now I've applied mean crease to two things. One is the bottom and one is this line. Now observe, if I go back to my object mode, and if I were to again view it at 6, yeah, you will notice that first of all, the bottom part of the cup problem is solved, okay? It's no longer deforming. Also, that one line to which I had applied a mean crease, you will notice that the entire surface of the coffee cup is smooth, but that one line still has its sharpness, right? So this is what mean crease does. It essentially maintains that sharpness. That is why I selected the entire edge, right, of the circle at the bottom, and I applied mean crease to it. So now it doesn't get deformed. So let me just remove that mean crease from the side. I can go back to edit mode and select this. Go back to mean crease, keep it to 0, and yeah, let me select that as well. Yeah, mean crease 0. Okay, so now that I've gotten rid of it, I can go back to my object mode and view it like this. Okay. So essentially at this point, if you followed it, you should have a coffee cup that's sort of complete. You've got a handle, you've got a base, it looks pretty smooth, and yeah. At this point, does anyone have any doubt? If no one has a doubt, you guys can tell me that there are no doubts or something. Anyone,
No
do
doubt.
you want, no doubts? Cool, cool. You guys want me to repeat anything, explain any particular feature, maybe add something to the coffee cup, anything? If not, then I will move to the real fun part of Blender, which is essentially materials and lighting. So fine then, if no doubts. Okay, cool. All right, so we're pretty much done with our coffee cup here. Now comes the rendering. I mean, not rendering, that comes towards the end, but essentially materials and lighting. Okay, so the
Sir,
material. Yeah,
me, if possible, can you teach us UV mapping too, sir?
sorry.
UV mapping.
UV mapping, I haven't had that much of experience in UV mapping as such, and I didn't intend to include it in this course as well because I thought I would just stick to the basic materials and rendering. But I'll do one thing. For those of you who really want to take this up, at the end of the course, I'll basically tell you some great references that you can view in your free time that cover everything, right? So,
Yeah, sure. Thank you.
okay, no problem. And don't call me sir, dude. I'm just your senior, not a faculty. Cool. Okay. So,
Hi bro, how do you add dimensions?
sorry.
How do you add dimensions?
Okay. So there is a way that you can add dimensions. If you notice, then on this N tab over here, you will notice that there is something called dimensions, and there is X and Y and Z. However, I've had this confusion as well. Blender essentially is not a CAD software. If you want to design something that has, for example, let's say tolerances and dimensions and strictly an engineering design as such, then you would be better suited to undertake that in a CAD software. For example, Fusion 360 or CAMD, or I mean not CAMD, or SolidWorks or whatever. For example, the main reason why I use Blender is just for concept visualization. If I have some idea, I roughly try to model it out, put in the materials and lighting and see how it looks. The other thing is there's also the option of animation, so you can play around with animation. So it's not a strictly engineering software as such. Does that clear your doubt?
Yeah, thank you.
Cool, cool. Okay. All right. So now that we have our coffee cup over here, let me try to add the other things that are required for the materials and rendering. Okay. So first of all, before I add, I'll just say that in order to get materials and rendering, you need to have like an entire studio setup, right? So what I mean by that is right now you only have a coffee cup. I will add a base, and then I will also add some light sources so that I have some platform on which the coffee cup is standing, and then I have a light source through which the light is coming out, and then you have you can see the coffee cup shadow and whatnot. So to do that, again, I'm in object mode, so make sure that you're in object mode. Make sure that the coffee cup is not selected, right? So it's unselected right now. If you want, you can simply click. So right now it's selected. If it is selected for you, click on A and it will be unselected, right? Again, Shift plus A, and then I will get this menu again. In this menu, I'm going to go to Mesh again. And in Mesh, I will choose Plane. Okay, so I've got a plane right there. Now I will click on S. I'm going to zoom out a little bit, and I'll click on S to scale that. Right, so this much should be fine. Right, so now I have an entire base. Okay, another thing, if I click on 1 or 3 and if I zoom in, you will notice that there is a little bit of space. Okay. Yeah, there's a little bit of space between the base and the coffee cup. Let's assume that there was not, I mean, that the space was too big. Okay, let's assume that your coffee cup is somewhere here and your base is somewhere here. You can basically connect them by the same way. You press G and Z, and then you move your base until it approximately touches your, the base of your coffee cup. Right. So I think, yeah, that should be fine. Okay, so now I have my coffee cup and I have my base. Now I need a lighting source. So again, Shift plus A, I click on a plane again, right? Now you can't see the plane because it's essentially gone at the bottom of the base, but I can move it up by G and Z, so it comes up, okay? Once it comes up, I'm going to scale it a little bit more. Let me move it a little lower, somewhere here. Okay, then I'm going to rotate it along, let's say, the x-axis. Okay, I'll rotate it a little bit, then move it a little bit as well, somewhere here. And let me try to scale it a little bit. So what I'm trying to do over here is right now, these don't mean anything. They're just planes. But when adding the materials, essentially for this, yeah, essentially for this, I will be adding the material for it as a light source, right? So what's going to happen is I have my coffee cup. This is my base. I can change the material of my base. And then I have a light source over here. And that light source is essentially going to come like this. You can design your own studio lighting and how you want, whether, right now it's, let's say, a plane. Let's assume you wanted your light to come out of a box or, a sphere. You can choose whatever geometry you want, and then you can just set the material of that geometry to a light source, and basically light will be coming from there. So I'm going to be using two lighting sources. So I've already stationed one of them. I'm going to use another one, right? So again, I'll scale it a little bit, R and X. I'll keep it somewhere. Yeah, this is about this much is fine. Keep it a little bit there. Increase the scaling. Okay. So the reason I've done this is because I wanted a two-fold lighting sort of a thing to happen here. So I have light coming in like this, and I have light coming in like this. Okay. I also want to position my coffee cup slightly tilted. So I'm going to rotate it. So I selected the entire coffee cup, R and then Z, and then I can rotate it. Let me keep it somewhere like this. Okay. Great. Now, before I move on, I want to show you something that's very cool. First of all, we can close this extra tab over here. So if you just press N, that will be closed. If you go to the top right of your screen, right, as you're moving at this point right here, your cursor will become a cross, right, at this point. Once it becomes a cross, while holding it with your left mouse button, you can drag it like this and it will split your screen, right? Same thing gets split into two screens. The advantage of this is whatever I do on, for example, I can basically view this screen in different ways, and I can have different things happening on the screen. The reason I'm asking you to split your screen is what we're going to be doing is on the right hand side, we will be allotting the materials, and we will be changing the light intensity and the material intensity and the texture, etc. And on the left hand side, basically, we will be having a render preview. So as I'm changing my material and my lighting, I can directly see how my material, if it was rendered, would look like, or the picture would look like, right? So in order to do that, uh, first on the top, you will see a button called Blender Render. Click on that and change it to a cycles render. This is essentially a render engine. So it's by default at Blender Render. We're going to change it to a cycles render. Okay. Once I've changed it to a cycles render, the object button, right next to the object button, there is a white ball, right? Or it looks like a white ball. So if you click on that, you have the options of selecting different viewing methods. So there's viewport shading is what it's called. So right now, by default, everything is in solid mode. We're going to change it to rendered. Right at this point, if you have a powerful enough PC, it will load immediately. If you have a very slow PC or a not so powerful PC, it will take a little bit of time. Okay, so what it's doing right now is is it's giving me a preview of if I were to render my picture right now, if I were to click on the render button, this is what I would get, right? And it's pretty dull. And the reason is quite obvious because we haven't allotted any materials to our to any of the objects yet, which is what we're going to start doing now. But we've just kept the render option open already so that as we are adding the materials, we can directly view how it's changing over here. Fine. So in order for you to add materials, so you don't need to select anything over here. You can just start selecting everything over here. Let's start off by adding the light source. Right? So I'll click this object. It's an object mode, by the way. We're not in edit mode. I'll click on that. The moment I click on that, on the right hand side, as I said, you have lots of options over here. Towards the right hand side, you will see a ball type of icon. If you take your mouse above that, you will see that it shows material, right? Click on that. Then there is a plus button over here. Click on that. And then there is another button over here called new. Click on that. Now, by default, it adds a material called diffuse BSDF to everything. So, but you can also change the name of your material. So, for example, let's say over here, I'm going to name it to light source one, right? Or this is a studio one, right? But it doesn't matter. Here on the surface, so you have multiple drop-down menus. There's a preview drop-down menu. If you click on that, it gives you a rough idea of how the material is going to look like. So diffuse BSDF on a sphere would look like this. Now I want to change it to a light source. So on surface, which is diffuse BSDF, if I click on it, I get all of these multiple material options, right? So for a light source, the material is called emission, right? I'll click on emission and automatically you should see that the left hand side has now become a studio light sort of a setup. You can also view how it would look like over here. The next two options, so surface is the material. The next two options, for example, are color and strength. Color, obviously, as it indicates, you can choose from a wide range of colors over here. So let's assume I wanted blue light, green light, or purple light, or whatever it is. For the time being, let's just keep it at okay, white light. Yeah, so white light, and then the strength is at 1. Now, strength is, as the name indicates, it's basically how much of the lights, the studio light you want. Right now, it's at 1. If, for example, I select 4 and click enter, then on that side, you'll immediately notice that it's much brighter, right? And let me repeat, I think 4 is fine, or we could probably have it at 5 or 6 and 7. Okay. So immediately you will notice that you have a light, a studio type of a light, and then you also have shadows and other light, right? The other studio light. So again, I click on that. I click on this material icon ball over here. I click on the plus button, and then I click on the new button, and then again, as I said, automatically it allots BSDF, diffuse BSDF. I'll click on that. Click on emission, and white light is what I want. So I'll just directly let me just rename. So the second plate emission was basically the same, guys. I mean, I follow the same procedure. I clicked on it. I went here to my materials tab. I added a new material and I set it to emission. So I follow the same procedure for adding that as well. Then if you notice that we have added the material to the studio lights, but we haven't added the material to the coffee cup as well as the base. And at the same time, if you notice the background, right? This background over here where I'm showing my mouse, that's sort of grayish. So you can actually change the background, and then as usual, you can apply the materials to your base and your coffee cup as well. Let me show you how to change the background, right? So on the right-hand side of your screen, again, among the many options over here, towards the left-hand side, you will again see another ball type of icon. And if you hover your mouse over it, it says world. If you click on that, then if you slightly go down under colors, you will see this grayish sort of thing. If you click on that, then from here, you can choose how you want your world to look like. For example, right now it's at slightly grayish. If I make it all black, then I have this sort of an effect. If I make it all white, then this is how it looks like. Okay. For the purpose of this workshop, I'll be keeping it at all black. The reason I'm going to keep it at all black is just so that you can, I mean, it gives it a more studio lighting sort of effect to explain that point, right? Okay. Before I move forward, I'm going to add the material to my coffee cup now. So I'm going to choose my coffee cup, click on the coffee cup, and again, I go to this bar on the right hand side, and I repeat the same procedure, which is the new. And after that, automatically I'm going to get selected diffuse BSDF, but we're going to work with a different material now. And then just change the view on the left hand side a little bit. By the way, it pixelates a lot, and the reason it's pixelating a lot is because it's a preview. I mean, that's fine. Okay. So from the diffuse BSDF, I'm going to very, very shiny sort of texture, which is, I mean, that's glossy BSDF. But there's a lot of ways in which you can change this material and you can edit it, which is, quite nice. So first of all, the color, right? So as usual, you can choose different colors that you want. Let's assume that I selected the green color, and then within this green color, I can also change how light or dark I want it on the right hand side. So if I go down, if you will notice that it becomes a very dark greenish sort of a color. If I go up all the way up, it's a very light over here, shows me how the material is going to look like. All right, first thing. Second thing, roughness. If you notice that there is something called a roughness over here. Roughness, essentially, you can think of roughness as the amount of shine or the amount of metallicness to the material. Now, right now it's at 0. So at 0, it has this very glossy, very shiny type of finish. If I, let's say, go all the way to 1, so you can only change it between 0 and 1. So 0 and 1 extremes. At 1, you will notice that it's got this very whatsoever. If I keep it back at 0, it's got this very, very shiny metallic look. However, let's say I don't want a very shiny look, but let's say I want a matte finish, right? So I can slowly change it to whatever value, okay? So at 0.247, it's not exactly very shiny, right? But at the same time, it's not very rubbery. It's got this premium matte finish of a look, right? Let the preview just get a little bit over, right? So you can notice that it's got this matte finish type of a look. What I've done is I have selected this greenish type of a material, right? And I have kept the roughness value at 0.247. So if you notice, it's got this matte finish type of a look. If I were to go all the way to 0, it'll get this very shiny, polished, metallic look, right? So I'm going to go somewhere at, let's say, 0.15. So let's at this value of 0.15, for example. You don't have to be exact, just have to see how the material changes. Over here, again, if you notice, I've got, that's fine. Now, what we've essentially done is the cup, the studio lights, as well as the background. But we still have not allotted the material to the base, right? So that's what I'm going to do now. I'm going to click on the base, which is this entire thing over here on the right-hand side, and repeat the same process. Immediately, if you notice, because the roughness value is at 0, I get this very shiny on that. I'm going to keep it somewhere at, let's say, 0. Let's 0.3. Yeah, 0.3 should be fine. You can also change the color of the base. I'm going to try to keep it slightly dark. For that, I focus on lighting more. Okay, so you're pretty much done with your basic. Right? So you've got the studio lights, you've got the material of the coffee cup, you've got the base. Right now, the only thing left is to actually render it. And before we render it, there's a little bit things we said for the camera because that is important. Right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put these two screens back together. So if you go here at the intersection, you will see that your cursor, changes. And once your cursor becomes like this, right click and then join area. Once you click on that, you can choose which area you want to enlarge. So if you go to the right. All right. So you guys were like the last thing that you guys saw, you understood that, right? I had basically allotted the materials to everything.
Yes.
Okay, cool. So to show you again, if I just go to rendered viewport shading. Then it'll take a little bit of time, but okay. So this is how our final product looks like. I'm still on call, right?
Yes.
Cool, cool, cool. I'm gonna keep asking if I'm on call every 1 minute or so. Okay, so this is what I had done. Do you guys have any doubts up until this point, as in how I gave the material of the base, the material of the coffee cup, and the studio lights or something? Because like we're pretty much done at this point. The only things left are the final touches. So, any doubts so far that you guys want me to clear or something?
No doubts.
Cool. Okay, so this is how the final render is going to look like. But before we go to that, we'll go back to solid again. And you need to understand that every time you try to render something, it only renders what is within something called a camera view. Okay, it doesn't render something outside of it. Now, how do you get the camera view and what is the camera view? Before I explain that, click on the coffee cup, right? Click on the coffee cup. It gets selected. We're in object mode. Then click on that wrench icon, which I had showed you before for the modifier, right? When you click on that, you will notice that the view is at 6 and the render is at 2, okay? We still have not clicked the apply button, right? Now we're going to do that, but don't click the apply button yet. Before you click the apply button, change the render from 2 to 6, right? So view, if it is at 6, it basically shows me what this would look like at 6. If the render is at 2, then I will be viewing this as very smooth, but when it actually renders, it will be rendering with the value of 2. So it will still look very boxy. So it's important that you change both of them to 6, okay, or whatever high value that you've chosen. And then you can click the apply button. So this is where we finally click the apply button. Okay, now it's applied, right? Now to get the camera view on your keypad, if you press the number 0, you get the camera view. So right now the camera is pointing somewhere towards the bottom of the cup, but essentially if you press 0, it goes to camera view. And if you press 0 again, it comes out of camera view. This little box over here, right, within the camera view, when you render, all that is within this box is what is going to render. So it's very important that within this camera box, you have whatever it is that you want to render. Right now, our entire coffee cup is also not there. However, once I have this camera box, if, for example, I try to, let's say, zoom out, or I try to rotate, or try to move, it automatically comes out of the camera view. If I try to zoom out or zoom in, I'm not able to, change my, camera essentially. To do that, what I'm going to do is click on 0, you get selected to your camera view. Click on N, right? When you click on N, this right-hand side little tab opens up like how it had opened up last time. So I click on N and this opens up, and right here, there is something called lock camera view, right? If I click on that, then the camera view gets locked, and then I can essentially, whatever I do, the camera will pretty much be fixed to the spot that I had initially chosen it for. If I remove the lock camera view, then the camera, I can change how much of the camera I want, etc. So right now, let me just zoom in a little bit, then click on lock camera view again, and now I can zoom out or zoom in whatever I want for the view of the coffee cup. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is essentially, let's say, have it like this, zoom in a little bit, let's say have it like this. Okay, and let me see how it's going to look within this view once I render. So again, it's very simple. I go to this white ball over here and click on rendered view, and it will show me how my picture would look like if it was rendered. So yeah, so this is essentially how it's going to look like once it's rendered. So I think this is about fine. Probably we could increase the lighting, let's say, a little bit more. If you want to come out of the camera view and if you want to edit, it's very simple. You click on 0, you come outside of the camera view. Let's assume I want to increase the light of this particular, plane over here. I click on that. I go back to materials. I click on that ball. Right now it's at 6. I can change it to, let's say, 8. Okay, I'm clicking to 8. Again, I can come in camera by clicking on 0. And then I again click on the ball, click on rendered, and see how it looks like. Okay, so the difference might not be that much because the increase wasn't that much. It was from 6 to 8. So it's a small increase, but if you were to increase it a lot, then you could probably see the difference. Within a rendered view also, I can move around, and I can see how it will look in different views. So right now, let's assume I just want to fixate on this view right here. Let's assume I'm happy with this view. Let me just slightly change it up. Yeah. Let's assume I'm happy with this view and this is the final view that I want to get rendered. Right. So materials, everything has been allotted. So if I'm happy with this view and this is finally what I want to get rendered, I'm going to go back to solid again. And for the final rendering process, on the right hand side, hello guys, can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Cool. So on the right hand side, again, you have all of these tiny icons over here. Towards the left, you will see an icon that looks like a camera, right? If you click on that, then you get all of these rendering options. So few things. Firstly, if you come down, there is an option called resolution. You can choose the resolution of your picture. Right now, if you notice, it's at full HD. But despite being at full HD, below you will see there is, it shows by default 50%. That means if you render, the quality of the image is going to be 50% of full HD, which is, about 540p, right? Let's assume you want to, the resolution to be full HD. So just increase it to 100%. Let's assume you wanted your picture to be 4K, right? So if you want it to be 4K, it's very simple. Instead of 100%, you can type in 400% over there, and your picture will, basically be of the resolution of 4K. But yeah, it's going to take a lot of time to render, obviously. So 1K is fine. Full HD is fine. Okay. If you go slightly below, you will see there's an option called PNG. If you click on that, this is essentially the file format in which you want to render it. So depending on what's convenient to you, you have PNG, you have JPEG, etc. So for example, I usually work with JPEG. You can click on JPEG. Once you click on JPEG, you will have like two options, black and white or color or RGB essentially. I'm going to click on RGB. Again, you have the option of a quality, whether it's right now it's set at 90%. I'll just increase it all the way to 100%. Right? One second. Okay. So now that I've increased it at 100%, JPEG, RGB, whatever, all that you have to do from here onwards is just click this render button, and the image, by image I mean whatever is within this camera view, will begin to render, right? So it's as simple as that. So I have everything there, full HD, RGB, JPEG, 100%. Okay, cool. So all I have to do is click on render and the process will begin. So rendering for me right now, if you've got a very strong computer, it should probably take much less time. But yeah, it's rendering on screen. While it's rendering, do you guys have any doubts? Hello, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Cool. You guys have any doubts until it's rendering?
One of the doubts asked by Siddhartha was how to perform the loop cut.
Oh, it's Control plus R. So I'll explain that to you 1 second. Let this just. Just render. So for example, if you want to perform a loop cut on a particular surface, you click on any point on that surface. For example, you can click on an edge or you can click on a face or anything, right? And once you click on, let's say, an edge or face, and if you press Control plus R, you will notice that a purple line or a purple, let's say, enclosure comes. Uh, at that point, you can't do anything. So if you click once, if you left click once, then you get the option of basically moving that purple line or that loop cut wherever you want on the screen. Once you have moved it wherever you want it, if you left click it again, it gets selected over there. As in, it basically stops over there. I'll try to show that in a bit. Let this just render for a bit. Any other doubts?
So yeah, I think the final rendered image is here.
Can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So guys, this is what the final render should look like. It's very, very basic, but essentially, it's I mean, it's fine. It looks okay. Okay, so there's a high possibility that at some point you guys would have, I mean, at some point you would have got stuck at some point because at least when I was learning, there were lots of points where I didn't know how to move ahead. But I think it's sort of with practice you begin to recognize where you're going wrong, etc. Like sometimes you get stuck because you got confused between object and edit mode. So you try to do something there and etc. So this is what the final image looks like. For those of you who want to work with Blender, like let's say 2.8, or you guys want to do much more advanced stuff, on YouTube, if you type Blender Guru, right? Can you guys see my screen, right?
Yep.
Okay. So on Blender, there's this guy called Blender. I'm sorry, on YouTube, there's this guy called Blender Guru. I started off my learning for Blender completely with this guy. So if you just scroll down, he has something called Blender Beginner Tutorial series. This one is for Blender 2.8. What I taught you guys is 2.79. 2.8 has a different UI, as one of you pointed out. So if you guys are interested in 2.8, you can take it up. My laptop doesn't support 2.8 because it's quite old at this point, but yeah. If you, for example, click on that video, this guy has around 24 videos, right? Each video is, some of them are 25 minutes, some of them are 40 minutes. But this guy essentially goes properly in depth. He explains you all the reasons and different things like texture, and I think he even does explains about UV mapping, etc. So lots of stuff. If you're a complete beginner, someone who has no idea whatsoever, you can start off with this guy, Blender Guru. He has an entire Blender beginner tutorial series, which at least I found very helpful. And besides that, if you're stuck at anything in particular, you can just type it out. Like, okay, you can literally type out your exact problem in Google, and hopefully you'll be able to find a solution for it. That's first thing. Second thing is, so before I did this workshop, the model which I had made to basically show you guys was this. Okay. What I did right now is slightly different, but yeah, get the point essentially. In animation, I did a small animation where with that same old model. So I'll just give you an example of animation here. Could you guys see that?
Yeah.
Okay, so essentially what's happening over here is you have three things happening. One is the light source. If you notice in the beginning, it's dim, but as the clip is progressing, the light source towards the left-hand side increases, right? So one thing that's happening over the course of the animation is that the light is increasing, all right, or the strength of the light is increasing. Second thing, obviously, is that the cup is rotating about the z-axis. So this is the z-axis. It's rotating about the z-axis. And third, there's translational motion as well, or essentially the cup is moving towards the camera is moving towards the cup. It doesn't matter. I mean, So three things are what I did for this particular animation. Light goes from being dim in the beginning to getting slightly intense towards the end. Rotation about the z-axis, and then finally translation or cup moving towards the camera or camera moving towards the cup. A clip like this, for example, is around 100 frames, right? 1 second, a standard 1 second is about 24 frames per second. If you want a higher quality, you can always go 30 frames per second or 60 frames per second. What happens is if you have, let's say, a 10-second video, that means if it's at 24 frames per second, you'll have to render 240 frames. So what I showed you guys was the rendering of one frame. Like that, you will have to render 240 frames. So if you've got a very strong computer, you can actually render 10 to 20, 30-second clips. So This is about animation. If you guys want, this should take around 1 hour to 1.5 hours. So yeah, I can probably take it up some other day. But besides that, let me just go back to the rendered view. Besides that, this is the final picture. I almost forgot how to save it. Sorry. Bottom left, you will see that there's a button for image, right? If you click on that, you have the option of save as image, so you can choose how you want to save that on desktop or whatever. Now that you've rendered it, like if you want to go back to your workspace, again on the bottom left, you will see that there's this picture icon here. If you click on that, there are multiple options, but bottom there is an option called 3D view. If you click on 3D view, you are brought back to where you were. You can click on 0, you can edit, you can do whatever you want back to square one. So that's about it.
From BMS IEEE, I would like to thank Atik Khan for hosting such a wonderful workshop. So I think we all have at least learned how to start modeling and start rendering images, even though which is Blender, as he told, he took it up as a hobby, but a lot of us can take it up in many different ways. So thank you again.